I had a nice letter. Well, there are always nice letters. I'll rephrase that. One of the nice letters that I got during the week was from a listener in Tynemouth, Albury Park Road, number 40, was Gordon Forrest. And he says, I enclose a copy of a photo and an article which appeared in the Melody Maker of March 1930. Which I found most interesting. I thought you may wish to add it to your personal archives. Thanks very much, Gordon. It's about famous northeastern folk who made their name in the dance band era. What a talent he had, Billy Ternent. Even at a young age, not only did he teach himself to play several instruments and also be very proficient in them, but he later added arranging to his CV. Frank, what can you tell me about Billy, the lad from North Shields? Perhaps you can do a spot on him and his music. Well, Gordon, I had a read through this article that appeared in the Melody Maker way back in March 1930. Not everything in there is true, but then can you ever believe what you read in the printed word in magazines or newspapers? Always with a pinch of salt, unless you got high blood pressure, in which case I wouldn't advise it. It's dangerous. So I can tell you anything you want to know about Bill. Billy Ternent was a good personal friend of mine, and I didn't really get to know him until he'd reached his peak, by which time he was in his 70s, and a wonderful player. I lived for 19 years around the corner from where he was born, and I admired the man greatly. As a musician, I've never met a musician like him, and I mean that. Music and the art of playing dance band music has improved immensely from the 1920s when Bill started up, but Bill was still recording into the 1970s. And if you trace the music through all those wonderful years, it got better and better. And you would think, well, it cannot get any better. Anyhow, who can tell you more about Billy Ternent than Billy Ternent himself? I remember I knew where he was born, I know the house, I know everything about him. But when you're interviewing a man for the radio, you've got to say, where were you born? Billy was just the type to say, well, you know where I was born? I was born in Shields, you daft tootin'. Never mind. I did ask him where he was born for the benefit of our listeners.
A little place called North Shields. Up north, up near Castle area. Well, I was in the business from being a child. I mean to say, my brother was a musician. Played in the theatres, and I used to play on a coal scuttle, as a matter of fact. I used to play drums on a coal scuttle. And then I was told I must learn the violin, because he played the violin, so I said, all right. And many a slap across the lug I got for that, you know, because there's nothing worse than hearing anybody practicing a violin. Anyhow, to make matters worse, he said, well, you better learn to play something else. So I said, well, what do you want me to learn? He said, you play the trumpet. He said, play the trumpet. I'll get you a trumpet. So he got me a trumpet, and I had a go at that. Got on very well with that. And then he said, now, I'm bringing a trombone home. He said, you better try and see what you can do with that. Anyhow, cut a long story short, after that about the instruments was, I was one of the first tenor saxophone players in the North. And I used to, during that particular time, I was playing in the theatres for silent pictures and that sort of thing. And after we finished, I used to go and do gigs in the various parts of Newcastle on this tenor sax. This was, wait a minute now, about just after the war, which war? Go on, say which war. I mean, the 1914-18 war. Well, I was doing very well up in Newcastle, and I was playing in a restaurant in Newcastle, and I played there for about 3 years. I used to play there in the afternoon and then go to down to a dance hall in Whitley Bay, about 12 miles away, and play for dancing in the evening. Anyhow, the next thing was that someone came into the restaurant when we were playing, and it happened to be part of an act called the Selma Four, who were very well known in those days. And one fella sent a note up to me, would I go across the table and see him? So he said, look, he said, I've been listening to your band, Bill. He said, we are stuck. He said, our saxophone player's taken ill, and he said he's had to go back to London. And he said, we've got to start playing at the Kit Kat Club next week, and he said, we want to do some rehearsing. Would you like to take the job on? I was very taken up with the offer and all that sort of thing. So I eventually went and asked them if I could go, and they said, all right, well, you go, and it might be our biggest break and all this sort of thing. So I joined them, and this all happened in a period of about 5 days. I joined them straight away, came down to London with the Selma 4, rehearsed for a week, and then we started playing theatres, such as the Kilburn Empire and all these old theatres, the Metropolitan Edgware Road. And after that, we had to go and relieve Jack Hylton's band in the Kit Kat Club. That was all right, and there was only the 4 of us, you know, and I had all the instruments on a thing that we'd rigged up. So one night, Hylton was upstairs on the balcony having his supper. And he heard me messing about with these instruments, so he sent for me. He said, how would you like to join me? So I said, yes, I would. So he said, well, come and see me tomorrow, so and so. And he said, now look, he said, I can't put you straight into the Hylton band. You'll have to wait a little bit, but what I will do, I'll put you in my Kit Kat band. He says, which is under the direction of Al Starita. He's an American, but you don't have to take any notice of that. He said, you can play second alto. Well, that was a great band, an absolute great band. At the time of when they did a marvelous record called Riverboat Shuffle. Now, this was only a band of, well, a very small band of about 13 or 12, and it made a great sound. And they played good jump stuff and everything. And as a matter of fact, Ted Heath was in the band playing trombone. Then Phyllis was playing guitar and banjo. And a man called Eric Little was playing drums. And the first alto player was Al Starita. Spent about 3 months in that band. During the course, Jack Hylton got to know I'd been doing arrangements for the Kit Kat band. So he said, would you like to do some arrangements for me? For a gramophone session? I said, yes, all right. And that was for a bigger band, of course, you know, 3 violins and 3 brass and 4 saxes and all that sort of thing. I had to do 4. And he paid me a $5 for each arrangement. Well, I thought I was quids in.
and spring is coming, I'm in love again. Hear my heartstrings strumming, I'm in love again. And the tune I'm humming is a heart love, card love blue. I'm in love again, and I can't rise above it, I'm in love again. And I love, love, love it, I'm in love again. And I'm glad of it, good news.
From there onwards, I never looked back. I was everything. I did everything for Jack. I said, every mortal thing that could be done. Before 2 or 3 weeks had gone, I was conducting the band and taking the rehearsals and all that sort of thing. And I didn't pull any punches. Being a Geordie, I didn't pull any punches at all. Probably I was due for 1 or 2 little bits of ridicule, but nevertheless, I stood my ground and did a marvellous job, I think, for Jack, and it was the greatest experience I'd ever had in my life with music and bands. Wonderful education. During the period of becoming a show band, the first concert record that came out in this country, in fact, that anybody ever heard, was Paul Whiteman's Sweet Sue. I got it, and I took it to Jack. I said, Jack, what do you think of this? Oh, he said, that's marvellous. He said, can't you do something like that? I said, all right, I'll have a try to do something like it. Very shortly after that, we had to do a continental tour, our first continental tour. We opened out at the Léon Pierre in Paris for a month, and then we went to the Scala Berlin for a month. Now, at that particular time in Berlin, there was some beautiful tunes came out. So Jack Hylton had one given to him called I Kiss Your Hand, Madame. And that was the first symphonic arrangement that Hylton's band ever did, which was I Kiss Your Hand, Madame, and we recorded in Berlin. And I think I did the thing, knocked the thing off in about, and I had to copy the parts myself, 6 hours at the most. At this particular time, I was playing in the fiddle section. I used to be in different sections. Every time I went anywhere, they'd be looking for Bill Ternent. Where's Bill Ternent? I can't see him. And I'd be probably playing second trumpet in the trumpet section, or I'd be playing on the bass, or I'd be in the trombone section, or in the fiddle section. And I played in the fiddle section quite a long time, and Freddie Schweitzer used to do a trick where he used to play the clarinet, out in the front, playing a clarinet like little 12-street rag, and he used to balance a violin on his brow, you see. Now, to make things right, and it was right, Jack would come over to one of the fiddle section, invariably me, and take my fiddle from me and give it to Freddie. Then, of course, we'd watch Freddie, and Freddie would do the old trooper's act of nearly dropping the violin. And I used to be, I used to have heart throbs in case anything went wrong with my fiddle. Eventually, he did drop it twice or thrice. Now, I ran out of 3 violins while I was in the Hylton band through Freddie Schweitzer dropping the violin. So I said to Jack, hey, come on, Jack, I'm not in the fiddle section anymore. You'll have to put me somewhere else. I can't stand this. I said, I'll go back to my saxophone.
Billy Ternent there himself telling his own story. So there's no doubting any items there because Bill was a very truthful and a very forthright man, believe you me. He was a joy to know, and I'm happy to say that I'm still in touch with his widow, who lives down there in London. She was a world champion ballroom dancer, and I once said she was the champion of all England, and she nearly ate me. I don't know where she got that temper from. Tremendous lady. Anyhow, Peter Walmsley, one of our listeners in Penwortham in Preston, is going to like this next piece that I'm going to play.